No more FIFA, now EAFC. The new game has dropped, but the gameplay is bleak. Sliders and settings are all we've got. Now let's change them up and spread the word in the streets. Welcome back to another season, boys! The new game is out and everybody is buzzing, excited. Some may have taken a flight out to New Zealand. If you know, you know. You know. If you don't know, then you just don't know. But we're here today for one reason. To make the game a bit more realistic, give it more of a simulation feel, to slow it down as well, and just overall make it more playable and enjoyable. Now let's get into the action, starting off with the controller settings. We'll be showing the sliders as well, and do make sure to stick around till the end of the video because I'll be showing you guys these settings in action, showing you the gameplay in 4K just for you to know what to expect. So let's start things off by having a custom preset. That means we'll be able to go in and change each individual setting to just how we like it. First category is shooting, and we'll have both assisted headers and auto shots off. This just is pretty self-explanatory. We want to shoot when we want to shoot, and we don't want the assistance on headers. Now, shot assistance. Normally there was assisted, semi-assisted, and manual. Now there's precision. And reading the description, precision is basically the same as semi-assistance. It's not fully manual, but then it's not fully assisted. To those who may ask, why don't we use full manual? That's because if you use full manual shooting or full manual passing, pass error within the sliders does not apply, and we want that to apply. So the best option here is precision. Timed finishing is an optional one. I prefer to have it on because it makes it feel more rewarding when you're able to time that shot perfectly and you get that sweet strike. Now moving over to passing, we have autoflare pass off because we want to be in control of when we pull out those flicks and tricks and not for the AI to do it for us, especially when we really don't want it to happen. We also have semi-assistance levels for through pass, lobbed through pass, ground pass, and crosses. Again, all of these are on semi because we want that pass error slider to be applicable. If you put these on manual, the pass error slider is null and void. One passing setting that I do have on fully manual is lobbed passing. Firstly, for personal preference, but it also allows us to play balls into space if we choose to, and to a player. With semi or assisted, it automatically goes to the player more often than not, and it doesn't allow for those switches of play or long diagonals if you want to play the ball into a winger, but not to their feet, but into the space for them to run onto. By the way, you'll see that in action in the gameplay as well. Pass receive lock is again very much optional. That just means at which point in the passing motion does the pass lock to the player that you want it to go to. I have it on late just in case I change my mind within that split second. And the precision pass sensitivity is on normal because it's again a new feature and I don't really want to tinker with it too much. On to defending now, which by the way is very difficult in this year's game. Let me know if you agree in the comments. I have auto clearances on. In previous games, I had it off because I felt like it was too helpful and not needed and almost like an automatic way to never make mistakes from the opposition crossing the ball. But I have it on now because there are way too many situations where your defender will try to take a touch in the 6-yard box, even if you're spamming the clear button. So I have it on. I then also have directional clearances because I like to be in control of which direction I clear the ball. So if you're clearing it out for a corner, out for a throw-in, out back to where it came from, you have more control, so I have it on directional. And as far as jockeying is concerned, I have it on assisted for now. This is what I normally do. I have it on assisted towards the beginning of the game. Once I get used to it, once I start to feel more comfortable with defending, I'll move it over to manual to give myself more of a test. But again, like I said, I believe defending is very difficult in this year's game. And for now, I have it on assisted. We have now been given a new option for what kind of defending we want to use. We previously could only choose between tactical or legacy, but now there's advanced defending, and it's a bit complicated. I've been trying it since the beta, still kind of switching between advanced and tactical and advanced and tactical, but what I'll say is advanced defending gives you more options for how you want to defend. So for example, pressing A on Xbox or pressing X on PlayStation allows you to body check a player instead of tackling them, allows you to steal the ball from them using your upper body mainly, but using the traditional B or circle buttons means you are tackling. Whereas with tactical defending, you can really only tackle. You use one button to tackle and body check and do everything like that. So it's slightly more complicated, especially when you try to contain a player. But again, it gives you more options. So again, personal preference. And rounding off defending, we have pass block assistance on, because of course we want our defenders to be making those blocks and making those interceptions whenever they can. As far as switching is concerned, most of these are down to personal preference, so I'll show you the ones that I use just in case you guys want to use them as well, but they aren't going to be that impactful on gameplay, mainly just switching players. One part of switching though that I will emphasize on is the auto switching move assistance. This refers to the direction in which a player you are switching to moves in and for how long they'll keep moving in that direction. So if you switch to a defender, for how long will they continue moving in that direction until you can fully get control over them. Sometimes I play mine around none or low just because I want my players to be super reactive to the direction which I want to change them into. Low sometimes helps as well because if you want to continue down the momentum they're going on, you know, it's just going to go on easier. Whereas with none, they completely stop, and if you don't move them in a direction you want them to go, you may be caught out defensively at times. Looking at the last few game settings here, we have contextual agile dribbling off because it just makes dribbling a bit too easy. There's also a new feature called orbit dribbling. I've tried it out a couple of times, but it just looks stupid and pointless, so I have it off. It's basically dribbling without touching the ball, where you're just moving your body around, and it looks very awkward, so I'd suggest having it off. We then have semi-assistance for being a goalkeeper, but whenever are we really gonna play as a goalkeeper? And finally, we have analog sprinting off, just personal preference yet again. I have the half length on 6 minutes. I've discovered that these settings work best for between 6 to 8 minute halves, so longer halves. If you're just here for like the 4-minute quick game, then they may be a bit too slow and clunky for you. So at the bare minimum, I'd say 5 minutes, but ideally around 6 or 7. And we have the difficulty to world class. Now here's something that I learned recently towards the end of FIFA 23. The AI play realistic football up until world class. From legendary and ultimate, they play what they used to call FIFA. I don't know what they're going to call it now, right? But they play more like what you see on Ultimate Team. So for example, if their fullback has the ball out wide, instead of crossing it into their striker, they're going to do a drag back and a drag back and a drag back and a drag back and cut it across for a tap in. So I have it on World Class. I used to play on Legendary and Ultimate, but I found that World Class gives you the best simulation feeling out of the three. Competitor mode is of course off, and we have player-based difficulty on, something that I haven't used really in the past, but playing this game for quite a few hours now makes a big difference. It makes those star players stand out, and they play at a higher level. They tend to dribble a bit more, they tend to play the riskier passes. If they're a defender, they tend to be more aggressive in how tightly they mark a player, so it really makes you feel the star players of the opposition. We move on to the camera, and I prefer to use the EA Sports game cam. I customize it slightly, but yeah, that's the go-to for me. I've tried broadcast. I believe broadcast is too zoomed in, and it makes gameplay even more difficult. And I've also tried the tactical view, which is new this year. Again, it's useful, but for me, it's way too zoomed out. So I believe the EA Sports Game Cam is just the sweet spot, but I further customize it with 0 height and 20 zoom so that it can be more on our eye level. There's also a new feature called Far Side Focus, which is quite underrated in my opinion. It allows us to see the opposite side of the field better, so we have it all the way up to 20. So if you have an opposite winger, an opposite fullback pushing up, in my experience previously, you couldn't really see what was going on and you kind of had to hope at times, but this eliminates that and it allows us to know exactly what we're doing all the time. Ball tracking speed is the new camera option we have, and I have it down to 0 because I've increased it and I don't like how the camera moves. It looks a bit choppy, it doesn't flow as much, so I'd suggest you guys have it to 0 as well. And the last of the new camera options is penalty area zoom. We have it right in the middle. We want to focus on the penalty area whenever we get into it, but putting it too much basically cuts out your wingers and you can't play certain passes, so I believe 10 is the sweet spot. Rules are pretty simple. We have injuries, offsides, and bookings all on, and of course we have handballs on. Sometimes it's better to go with handballs on, except for penalties, in case you don't want penalties for that. It may get controversial at times, but I have it on. Yeah, give me the pens if it's a handball, okay? And the strictness of the referee, I have it on strict. Very strict allows us to have more fouls, which is, again, more realistic. You know, we can get like 20 fouls in a game, right? But you may also get 3 or 4 red cards in a game, which is not so realistic. Well, I mean, bro, with these new yellow card rules, it may actually be, so you do you. You'll notice that we skipped both the visual and audio tabs, but that's because those options have very little to do with the gameplay and all down to personal preference, and you guys just can do whatever you want over there. It's time to get into the main part of the video, the sliders themselves, and these sliders have been well and truly tested from the latter stages of FIFA 23 to the EAFC beta to now the full launch of EAFC. There have been a lot of hours into these, so I hope you guys find them useful. Starting off with the user sliders, both sprint speed and acceleration have been lowered to 40 just to slow things down a bit more and not make this into a sprinting simulator. I've already spoken earlier in the video about pass era and shot era. These two are very important. We have shot era up to 65 to complement that precision shot in the settings to make shots quite difficult, and whenever you get that amazing goal, you appreciate it a bit more. We then have pass era all the way up to 90. Yes, up to 90, which makes playing those intricate passes a bit more difficult, making those very technical players really matter and keeping the ball to be quite a difficult task. Shot speed remains on 50, but pass speed is all the way down to 33. You take the pass speed plus the pass era. Yeah, playing tiki-taka football will be difficult if you don't have the players to do so. One thing I'll also say is these sliders really reflect the quality of players. If you have Man City or Barcelona, one of these top teams, you can do that. But if you're trying to do this with Sheffield United, it may be a long day, bro. The injury sliders remain the same from FIFA 23 for me. We have frequency up to 80 and severity down to 30 because we want to have quite a few injuries like every other game to get a bit of an injury, but not every other game to get an ACL injury. So the severity is down to 30. Both the goalkeeper ability and the marking is up to 75 because the marking is never tight and the goalkeeper always concede at their near post. It hasn't been fixed for years, so we always have to do it ourselves. Run frequency being down to 10 means you more often than not will have to manually trigger runs of your players. So for example, if your winger isn't instructed to run in behind, they almost never will unless you tell them to do so. So once again, putting control in your hands. Line height is one I played with quite a lot because in previous iterations of the game, I found that the defensive line would sit too deep, but in this game, they are quite high, so 50 is just right. As for line length, this is the gap between the opposition defense to the opposition midfield, and from the midfield to the attack. So how compressed or how open they are. We have it all the way down to 30 because we want to have those pockets of spaces and those half spaces to be very small, and for you to use them, you need some serious technical footballers. We've changed up the width ever so slightly down to 45 just to keep the defense closer together. I felt that it was a bit too exposed, so 45 is just right. And we have the fullback positioning on 50. The power bar is optional, and finally we have the first touch control era all the way up to 90. This is a big change personally because this is one slider that I never really changed. I always used to keep on 50, but now we have it up to 90 and it works. It absolutely works. Previously, there were a lot of glitches in how the players would control the ball. Of course, once in a while, you'll see a glitch because it is EA at the end of the day, but first touches really matter this year. And I'll just quickly go through the CPU sliders here, but just know they are the exact same as the user sliders, putting everything on the same level. One thing that I used to do is put the opposition pace slightly higher. So you saw ours was on 40, so normally I'd put the CPU on 41 or 42. But trust me, they're quick enough in this game, so everything is the exact same. So we are now in the game, showing you guys the full screen, and I'm just going to show a couple of clips here, a couple of different scenarios to give you guys a better idea of how these settings and how these sliders look in action. Firstly, here we have Dortmund against PSG, playing as Dortmund. You saw the mistake there. PSG now under Luis Enrique, a very high pressing team that put a lot of pressure on their opponents. And it's fair to say that we were feeling the pressure in this game. Looking at the stats in the top left-hand corner there, it's a game in which we had very little of the ball. Not that we didn't want the ball, just we weren't allowed to have any of it. I left the player-based difficulty indicators on, just to show you which players are getting those boosts and are the star players on their own team. But I normally would turn these off. I've turned them on just to give you guys the idea whenever they get the ball to see how they play. And yes, this was not an easy game in the slightest, and Kylian Mbappe was a big problem. We get the ball back here and we try to break on their counter-attack, which is just the only way that we were going to make chances. They are pressing quite high, meaning they are leaving space in behind, but in that instance, Achraf Hakimi having the pace to deal with Karim Adeyemi and tracking back effectively. None of our defenders have the pace to deal with Ousmane Dembele, but luckily for us in this situation, he takes a heavy touch and our keeper is very strong in that situation. I'll be honest, I have no idea how we made it to the second half without conceding a goal. We were just hanging on and hoping that we can find something on the counter-attack. But more defending for us to do here. A ball played in behind there. Again, good goalkeeping from Gregor Kobel, who undoubtedly was our best player. Trying to go long, trying to go short, nothing really working. And PSG on the attack once again. We're even playing a centre-back at right-back just to try to deal with Mbappe. But look at that, their pressing is just so relentless. Their pressure is insane. And eventually it pays off. So using these settings, when you come up against a team that press very highly and that have the quality, you are going to pay for your mistakes like we did in that situation. Now in a different game, playing as Real Madrid against Union Berlin, a very different kind of game now, showing that you can also be the aggressor in this instance. You can be the team that pins the opposition back and basically have them camped in their final third and just try to break them down. Of course, Union Berlin do not press at all, and it is very well reflected in this situation. We are constantly trying to break them down through set pieces, through short passes, through crosses, and they are just being stubborn. Just clearing the ball away, we keep retrieving it. You can see that they don't give us any sort of space, sometimes having to resort to long shots. And I like this because whenever the big teams come up against the smaller sides, they sometimes get frustrated. And let's be real, it sometimes works, right? So just because you have more quality, it shouldn't mean that you are 100% going to win all the games. You still have to work for them. And we were really working to get our goal in this situation. Here is Valverde finding a bit of space. But there they are again, they're just clearing the ball away. We keep retrieving it. We have so many players high up in their half. And it's just about trying to be creative, trying to find that invention to try to break down this Berlin Wall. And finally through a corner, a well-taken set piece by Federico Valverde finds Aurelien Tchouameni, who gives us the lead, and you can just see the relief of the players and the fans after a frustrating couple of minutes. Now, the final situation we'll be playing out here is Liverpool against Everton. Liverpool are a very high-pressing team, and although they like to dominate the ball, they don't do it the same way Manchester City or PSG or Real Madrid do it. They are all about aggression and putting the opposition defense under as much pressure as possible, as quickly as possible, and for as long as possible. The counter pressing is insane. You can see there, all of the players are in the Everton half. Our two centre backs are on the halfway line. And you can see the line between the Everton defense to the Everton midfield. They are very close to each other, which means it's difficult to play through balls. And sometimes we're having to go up wide and just try to get cutbacks in, to get crosses in there. But this is typical Liverpool, or this is prime Liverpool, in the sense that you find it very difficult to play out. And when you do get the ball, you have to be very decisive with it. And in this instance, Everton are able to play out wide, very typically targeting our right back area, because we all know that our right back is not the best defensively, now is he? Credit to Everton, they try to play some decent football there. And this also shows that it's not all going to go our way, and that even the smaller teams can still get the best of you if you aren't switched on defensively. But more of the same in this instance. Everton camped back in their own box, having to rely on crosses. Sometimes not the best option because they just have big centre-backs in there. But you'll see the possession stats again, dominating the ball, getting all the shots. But with Liverpool, the difference is their aggression in the press, their aggression in the counter-press. But Jordan Pickford just decided to turn up today and be very good. We're in the second half and we still haven't scored. And here is Mo Salah having to rely on some individual brilliance in this instance. Gets away from the second man, plays it to Cody Gakpo, who cuts it across for the late arriving Alexis McAllister to give us the lead. Very aggressive, but we had to rely on Everton switching off to get the breakthrough. And this is the display of the manual lobbed pass. We'll show it again a bit slower here. You can see Trent, of course, having that tremendous long passing accuracy. He doesn't play it directly to Diaz, but he plays it into the space left by Seamus Coleman, which allows Diaz to run onto the ball. As we continue to try to break down this Everton defense and evidently fail at that, we're going to leave it at that. Do, of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am always open to feedback and I'm always open to you guys suggesting stuff. I'm not saying these sliders are perfect and I'm not saying these are going to work throughout the entire game. Of course, as updates come out and the gameplay is changed throughout the year, I'll also be changing up the sliders, so make sure you are subscribed to be notified whenever the new set of sliders come out. The gameplay will initially feel quite slower than the default gameplay, so I'd say give it time and be patient with it. It's mainly catered to those who are most likely to play career mode like myself. And if it feels too easy, I'd suggest moving the game settings to manual rather than going up to legendary or ultimate difficulty. Of course, it is your choice at the end of the day. And I believe at some point I'll try legendary difficulty or even ultimate. But for now, we're going to stick on world class. Do drop a like on the video if you have found this useful and if you have enjoyed it. And please do subscribe. We are, of course, on the road to 1K. So I'd greatly appreciate anybody who hits that sub button. And I'll be starting off a new career mode on Monday again using these settings. This is how the gameplay is going to look, and it's always focused on realism. So hit the bell notification as well to be notified for the new career mode dropping on Monday. I've been Cookie Crusher. I'll see you guys next time.